Welcome to the Birds and the Bees podcast. This is Braxton Dutson.
That's the key. People aren't talking about it.
Everybody needs to know that porn is not a documentary.
It's not like if we don't talk to kids about sex and sexuality, they're not going to hear about it. They're just not going to hear about it from us.
They have tons of questions, they just don't know how to ask them.
All you have to do is be one chapter ahead. You don't have to know everything. Just one chapter ahead of wherever your child is.
Welcome to Birds and the Bees podcast, episode 18. This episode's with Chad Anderson, LCSW, and we have a really cool topic for today, one I've been really excited to go over. And essentially, we are talking about polyamory and relationships. Opening a relationship, being in a polyamorous relationship, and the ins and outs of what helps a polyamory relationship go. Maybe some things that you run into that are difficult. If you're thinking about opening a relationship or getting into a polyamorous relationship, some of the blind spots that you need to make sure you're watching out for. Maybe some of the things that you should consider before starting into a polyamorous relationship, or if you're in one, how to continue to navigate that relationship. Chad's been working with polyamorous couples for many years. I think one of the things that's most exciting for me is the way that he describes what things do you need to expect being in a relationship like that, as well as how you might be able to navigate jealousy or other things that might come up. We have a wonderful conversation about that, and I think you're all going to really enjoy this episode of Birds and the Bees podcast. And if you're in a polyamorous relationship or a non-monogamous relationship and you feel like something was left out, or you had the experience and you want to share your story, we would love to hear what your story is or what your experience has been. You can head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Birds and Bees podcast. And leave us a message, leave us a comment there, send us a private message. You can also call us at 385-449-1818 and leave a voicemail about your experience. We can keep it anonymous, and we'd love to hear what your experience has been. If anything, share this information with someone that you know that may be looking into a polyamorous relationship, or a loved one that you think could benefit from this information. We'd love to help out in any way that we can. And if you could help us out, leaving us a review over on iTunes or at Stitcher, that really helps us get out to more and more people who are looking for this information and that would like to build their own sexual health and their relationships with their children. So without further ado, this is episode 18 with Chad Anderson, LCSW, Polyamory. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. All right, I'm here with Chad Anderson, and he's an LCSW. Do you have any other letters that we throw behind there on the name?
I used to, but I just use LCSW now.
Yeah, it's Chad Anderson, LCSW, and we're here talking today about polyamory and the Mormon community, as well as how religion and culture plays into these loving lifestyles.
It's a complex and rich topic.
Very
Absolutely.
much so. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So today tell me a little bit about yourself, Chad. Like what? You're doing a documentary, and you've got other passions that you've got. What?
Sure.
What
I've been
that?
a social worker about 16 years. I moved to Salt Lake City 7 years ago,
Wow.
give or take. After coming out of the closet, after growing up Mormon. I have 2 sons that I'm co-raising here with my ex-wife, and I'm still in practice as a social worker, but also writing now. So working on a documentary. I just published a book called Mormon Dad.
Wow.
And so kind of launching into new realms. But therapy remains one of my lifelong passions. And since coming to Utah, I've done a lot more work with the LGBT community and the polyamory communities. So those have become areas of specialty over the last half decade or so.
Nice. What? Tell me a little bit about the documentary you're doing.
The documentary is based on hate crime that took place just under 30 years ago, based in Utah. So a gay man who was killed and nobody really knows the story. So that's a whole separate podcast, but we could talk about that for hours. We're about 70% finished. I'm hoping to be finished with the doc within the next few months. We've been working on it.
Wow.
2.5 years. So.
What's the documentary going to be called?
We're going to call it Dog Valley.
Dog Valley.
That's the name of the remote area where this hate crime took place in central Utah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really busy, and I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, really.
When it comes to, so let's define polyamory in a broad sense, and as we're talking about it, do you have a definition that you go by?
I've seen trainings on polyamory where they have handbooks of 50 plus different definitions of subsets of polyamory. I think it's kind of like the word queer. People are reclaiming the word queer, which rather than LGBTQIAA. So it can mean a lot of different things, and it's up to each individual person to define. For me, I just keep a very loose definition of polyamory as having more than one sexual partner. So that can mean a lot of different types of things. Some people consider even emotional polyamory a thing. They have one sexual partner, but they're emotionally connected to others. So the thing I've learned over the years is as each person comes in, whether they're using the word swinging or whether they have multiple boyfriends or girlfriends, or whether they have one monogamous partner and other partners that they only share with their monogamous partner, there's a lot of different versions of polyamory. So I just keep that as kind of a loose definition, meaning more than one sexual partner.
Perfect. And that's how we'll refer to it here in this podcast, is referring to more than one sexual partner. And
it's a very diverse definition that each individual uses completely individually.
Yeah, and it can mean whatever it means to the person. So if someone says I'm polyamorous, really what you need to say is, great, what does that mean to you?
And I get tons of clients who are like, we're swingers, we're not polyamorous, or we're polyamorous, but we're not swingers. Or, it's, and swingers by definition is a very different thing than the standard definition of polyamory. But I know people who are swingers who call themselves polyamorous. So again, it becomes very complicated.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about when clients come to see you, what do they tend to be coming for?
That's not an easy answer. So being LGBT, for example, I don't ever want to go to a therapist who I have to defend my lifestyle to. I don't want to have to explain what being gay means. I don't want to have to go into long definitions of history. I just want someone who's going to accept me and love me for who I am. Although the reason I'm going in may be related to parenthood or job stress or depression. It's the same thing for me with polyamorous clients.
Oh, okay.
So people are coming in to be for a diverse myriad of reasons, but they want to go to someone who they would call polyaffirmative, who they don't have to justify their lifestyles to. And in Utah, that becomes complex because the Mormon religion is so dominant that although there's many, many therapists in Utah, it's not always easy to find someone who is supportive and affirmative of various lifestyles.
Totally.
So people come in for a myriad of reasons related to relationship stress, related to parenthood or mental illness. That said, there are often issues related to polyamory based on relationships, insecurity and jealousy, and how to navigate falling in and out of love or keep a long-term relationship going when you're excited about someone else. So there's a lot of issues that can be unique to polyamory that are pretty common as people come in, but it's an individual thing.
Totally. And I think that's what I want to get into today when it comes to maybe some of the things that, the nuances in polyamory that are unique to being a part of that community or part of that lifestyle, and how to navigate some of those.
Yeah. So as a standard, gay male couples are much more frequently polyamorous than a lot of others. Straight couples can be really frequently polyamorous, but in my experience, it's most frequently with a heterosexual male and a bisexual female. And lesbian couples seem to be the least likely to be polyamorous. Again, research backs some of that up, but I'm not going to quote any statistics here.
Totally.
So I see a lot of gay couples or gay individuals who are navigating this, and then I see a lot of those kind of straight couple models with the straight guy and bi or gay girl. So in Utah, the subset of the population generally means that you have people who grew up very religious and are later in life not only leaving Mormonism, but also discovering their sexuality and learning how to drink and learning how to date and learning how to have a world beyond what they were raised with.
Yeah.
So polyamory and relationship stuff can bring up a lot of shame and a lot of what I like to call delayed adolescence. When you didn't learn how to fall in and out of love at 13, you have to sometimes learn how to do that at 35, while you're married with children. So there's a lot of complex issues that come up and a lot of those shame issues.
So when someone's growing up LDS and they are not dating till they're 16, and then maybe they get one partner and they date through high school, and they're high school sweethearts, then they get married, and all of a sudden later on down the road, they start to feel like, hey, there's probably more than this. Let's, I don't know, they may say open their relationship or invite someone in or things along those lines. And then there's a tendency to be more connected to one person or to keep getting their heart broken time and time again. Or maybe they leave the church and they're not 100% sure what relationship they want to be in. They have to go through all that again.
Yeah. Well, not even again. They have to go through it the first time.
You're right, because they didn't do it the first time.
Well, right. And Mormons tend to be, even when they're dating, from 16 to 18 or 21, it's very chaste and modest and no alcohol and no sex and keep everything above the neck. And so the Utah model, there's an American model of relationships we call the monogamy model. And the standard, and this is very like 1950s America way of thinking, the standard is you meet someone while you're young and you marry young, and you stay with them for the rest of your lives. And they're supposed to have met all of your needs forever. And then you just work it out through thick and thin, for better or worse. I mean, think of all the marriage vows. And that's a pretty unrealistic model to marriage. That doesn't mean you can't just be with one person for 50 years. But the idea that person will take away all of your needs and pain and hurt and shame, and they're going to always just meet everything for you, that's a pretty unrealistic model. And it leads to a lot of shame issues.
Yeah.
Because when you aren't happy, or when that person isn't meeting your needs, or you're not sexually compatible, or whatever the case may be, you're left feeling with what's wrong with me, what did I do wrong? And for Mormons, that's amplified times 25,
because you're supposed to be
right. If you
everything.
don't end up happy, or if you find yourself dissatisfied in any way, there's something wrong with you, because God promised you that you would be happy. So there's a standard Utah model of the girl's right out of high school, the guy's right off of his mission. She's 18, he's 21. They get married, and by 25, they have 3 kids, and they're $40,000 in debt. And she gets depressed, and he gets addicted to porn. And Utah literally has the highest rates in the country of depression among middle-aged women and porn addiction among men. Those are literal statistics. So you have this model of people who aren't happy because they never learned how to be, and it's really dangerous. So picture any of these couples coming out later as polyamorous or as queer or as bisexual, and in conjunction with leaving the gospel. And now suddenly maybe you found love in the arms of someone else. And how does your spouse feel about that? How do you feel about that? There's all this old programming that tells you you're wrong, you're broken. And the person you're dating is also likely feeling the same way. So it becomes a spider web of human emotion and complication. So the model I often use with people, and I wish I could show the visual here, but if you picture 2 individuals who are healthy and happy in their own skin, who are then choosing to be together because they enrich each other's lives, not because they're broken and they're looking for someone to fix them, or not because they have this preconceived idea that if I get married or have a child, then I'm going to be happy, but people who are put together, then choosing to be together. No matter what the model is from there, they have the potential to be happy long term, whether they're monogamous or polyamorous. But they're going to change and grow over time, and their needs are going to change and grow over time.
Completely.
So nobody should enter polyamory with the idea that this will fix us or this will make our marriage better. It has to come from a place of health and stability and happiness.
And I think that's when I find the most like individuals that come in that have been or participated in polyamory situations or in relationships, that they're coming in with betrayal feelings, or that things haven't worked out very well for them because it's come from a fix-it place. Well, our marriage isn't going very well. You like to have sex and I don't, so maybe we should have someone in the relationship that does. And it kind of haphazardly is like, well, let's see if this fixes the relationship, versus hey, we're really happy with each other, and I see that you have this need, and let's start looking at it from a different way, and let's really make a plan about what this looks like for our relationship. Instead, it seems like it happens, and a lot of couples will then go, wait, no, I'm actually not okay with this, and now I feel all this hurt and pain. And I mean, is there a way to kind of plan if you're like, hey, we want to open our relationship, or we want to move into a different non-monogamous situation? Is there a way to plan? Is there a way to help prepare for that?
Sure. And there has to be a lot of great communication skills, and there has to be a lot of room for hurt and pain.
Okay.
So let's say we have a couple, and I'll just use the names Jack and Jill here, and they've decided to open up their relationship. Mm-hmm. And Jack is dating a woman on the side, and Jill is dating a woman on the side, and it's not the same woman. Mm-hmm. And they may be fine with that for 2 or 3 weeks. And then one day they're sitting on the couch next to each other, and Jill wants to be close to Jack, but he's busy texting his girlfriend. And suddenly she feels very sad and furious because he's not paying attention to her. Jealousy and hurt and pain and prioritizing and regular communication become a huge part of these relationships. And there has to be the ability to negotiate that through time. So there's a lot of contracting, and there's a lot of rule following. And cheating, whether you're monogamous or polyamorous, is always against the rules. Mm-hmm. It's never okay because it's always a contract breach. And so there's a lot to be navigated there, and it's so individualistic because things that might upset someone on one day don't the next, and then do again the following. So it's exhausting. Polyamory is like a ton of scheduling. And I can give a lot of different examples of what healthy poly relationships look like. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll toss one out right now. Again, I'll make up names. We'll say we have Mike and Molly, who are a couple, and they're 30, and they're very happily married, no kids. And she has a much higher libido and likes really kinky things. Mm-hmm. And he's more of a vanilla, like, I love you and I want to be just with you. So they negotiate a way for him to have a full-time girlfriend on the side that he's courting and seeing regularly. And she's friends with Molly. Mm-hmm. And Mike spends a few nights with his girlfriend and the rest of the time with his wife. Meanwhile, his wife has a few play partners on the nights that Mike's off with his girlfriend. She can have people over and have fun with the kinks that she enjoys that Mike does not. And so they've found a way for them to navigate need. That said, it's not okay every day, and they have to keep working on it together. So there's all these different methodologies out there. Some couples share partners. Mm-hmm. Others, there's one who wants to be polyamorous and the other that does not. So there's a million scenarios I could give.
Oh, yeah.
But most people who've been in a relationship can say out loud that their libidos are not always lined up with their partners. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they want sex much more frequently than their partner does, or much less frequently. And the person who's being asked to have sex much more than they want to isn't necessarily happy. Yeah. And the person who is asked to just not have sex and only when their partner wants is not necessarily happy. Mm-hmm. So there has to be ways to negotiate that because, again, that monogamy model of all your needs will be met forever and you'll be happy don't work in most scenarios.
And as you're saying these things, it sounds a lot like you're saying the planning part is a huge part in this, where you've got a couple nights a week, and that works for Mike and Molly. This night and this night you play with your friends, I'll be within this courting relationship, and we have this plan. In a monogamy model, it's the same type of thing, or in a polyamory model where you get someone that doesn't necessarily have too much of a libido and someone that's got a lot of libido, even having a conversation and planning about when are we going to have sex? Is there room for spontaneity? What are we going to do in order to meet both of our needs and we both feel respected? And it sounds like it's quite similar, but maybe more intense when it comes to polyamorous relationships.
It can, and the reason it becomes more intense is because there's more people involved.
Exactly.
Because the other partners have needs and other relationships also. That said, I know a lot of very, very happy polyamorous couples.
Yeah.
I mean, we can all think of monogamous couples who have been together for 20 years and they've raised the kids and they've both put on 40 pounds and now they sleep in different bedrooms and they're good friends, but they don't really spend a lot of time together and they don't have sex. That's not a happy version of life either. And I'm not just saying that polyamory would magically fix their life. I'm just saying that any healthy relationship, monogamous or poly, goes back to that two healthy, happy people who are taking care of themselves and then choosing to be together. And that's what it has to look like. I get, not a lot, but on occasion I will get a man who kind of drags his wife into therapy and says, I heard you're a polyamorous affirmative therapist. You need to convince my wife to become polyamorous because I have sexual needs she's not meeting. That's never going to work.
Nope.
I mean, she may come around to that idea and they can talk and they can negotiate, but no one can ever be bullied into a situation like this. On the flip side, if they don't, then he's just not getting his needs met on a regular basis. So looking for an excuse to cheat is never going to work. And also just completely denying yourself needs is also never going to work. It's a very tricky prospect.
Relationships are tricky in of themselves.
They really are.
Very much so. And the more people you bring in, the more tricky they can get. But at the same time, being able to be... I love the fact that you're saying that you're taking care of yourself. That sounds like... I mean, number one, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't bring anything into the relationship.
Right. And just that basic self-care model. If you didn't sleep well last night, or if you're stressed about work, or if your mom's in the hospital, anything that knocks you off kilter knocks everything off kilter. And it's the same thing. If I am not getting my needs met by my partner on a consistent long-term basis, it impacts my work and my health. And so they all play into each other. Yeah. So that ability to self-care and self-regulate is really crucial. One of the first poly people I ever met was a very liberated, independent, powerful woman. I'll call her Janine, who came in just to talk. And she'd been polyamorous for years, and she had 5 boyfriends. She was a career woman with 5 separate relationships. And over a period of time, one of the guys cheated, and she was really mad. And so then she was dating other people, and then she didn't want to. Then she had 3 boyfriends, and then eventually she kind of wanted to become monogamous with one of them. And it's a person who grew and adapted and changed over time. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful to just listen to, I'm a different person at 25 than I was at 20, and I'm going to continue to grow and change and adapt. It's a listening to need and partnering with the right people along the way. Yeah, I think it's along the lines of, I tell couples all the time that we don't have the relationship. So in the Mormon communities, we're saying, you know, someone's right now, the men are getting home at age 20 and the women are getting home at age 21 off their missions, because they lowered that age bar. So now we've got 20-year-olds that are seeking for an eternal partner, and all of a sudden we're getting married at 20, 21, 22. That marriage, and anyone's marriage, anyone's relationship starting that young, even if it's not that young, but starting at the beginning of the marriage, going through the honeymoon phase, all of a sudden you kind of start a new relationship anyways, just by default. And you add kids, or you adopt, or you bring other people into a relationship, and you have a new marriage. And then all of a sudden you've gone through a huge fight where there was this really down or a hard part in your relationship, and you almost start these new marriages or these new relationships at any given time. I kind of joke a lot that me and my partner are on our fifth marriage, because things have changed all throughout, that it's not the same at the very beginning as it is right now. And there's been growth, and there's been grief, and there's been feelings of hurt, and you have to work through all of those. And that's just a relationship model. Like, you have to change and grow with it, because we don't stay the same as humans. We're always changing. I tend to mark my time in 90-day increments. It's a season. I'm not the same person in spring as I was in winter, and I'm not the same person in summer as I was in spring. And we're constantly shifting and adapting, and the ability to grow through that pattern. So in polyamory, if you have a contract with your partner, that contract is constantly being amended and altered. Wow. It becomes most complex when one partner does not want to be polyamorous, and they're kind of simply stepping into that realm to appease their partner. And that can be really tricky, because again, there's a lot of shame and depression that can be associated with that. Yeah. With that delayed adolescence I mentioned earlier as well. So for what I'll call late bloomers. I can use that phrase. They're just learning how to drink, and they're looking for escapes. And so I see a lot of people who are now sexually open who are learning. They're 42 and getting drunk for the first time.
Wow.
And there's bad decisions being made while there's 5 children at home. I mean, so there's a lot of complicating factors. There also seems to be, particularly in the gay male community, there's a lot of guys who treat sex without any sort of emotion or commitment. In fact, there's many who have a pool of people that they have sex with and a pool of people that they date.
Wow.
And they have a kind of different places, but they're still kind of looking, in Utah at least, they're still kind of looking for that monogamous space to exist, and they're wanting that one person who's going to make them happy forever while they have multiple partners. So it's a extreme shift in thinking that has to take place. It's Utah's weird.
As we keep talking, getting into it, I'm like, this is getting, so complex.
Well, and polyamory is not a Utah topic, but
No.
but I'm practicing in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
So the pool of people that we're
conservative,
drawing
the
from.
pool, yeah, very much so.
Right, and there's a lot of, again, internalized shame and internalized homophobia.
How do you work through the and I guess maybe I'm branching off into another topic, but the shame and the homophobia, as well as, bringing those pieces into a relationship. How can you work through those, or how do you help individuals work through those?
Anyone who's been carrying baggage for a long time has to reach a place where they are making a concerted effort to not carry that baggage anymore, or to learn how to more appropriately carry it. So for some people, it's the matter of breaking a habit, and for others, it's a lengthy healing process that has to go on over a long period of time, with regular, habitual, daily life changes and affirmations. And for some, there's personality disorders or addictions mixed in. That's a very complex topic. You may have trauma survivors. Plus, we're dealing with an extremely patriarchal society in America. Men have more value than women. I'm saying that sarcastically, but that's the way that we tend to view things internally as we're raised. White is more dominant than black, and male more dominant than female, and straight more dominant than gay, and gender defined more dominant than transgender, and all of these different places. Realistically, the world is so much more complex than that, and so challenging all of those internal belief structures that you were raised with takes a lot of concerted effort. It's not easy to confront those things. So I'm being very broad-based here, but without getting into each specific person, it becomes very complicated. So I'm thinking of my own story. I didn't come out. Well, I came out 3 times. I came out at 15, and then in my mid-20s, and then finally out at 32. And my first 2 comings out. My first 2 times coming out, I wasn't ready. I had so much internalized homophobia. I saw it as something that was broken, had to be fixed or amended. And I finally reached that place of liberation at 32, and then had to spend time figuring out what the hell that means in my life, because I had spent so long being unhappy. And it's a similar prospect for people who are going through trauma, or who are leaving Mormonism, or who are entering polyamory. There's a whole different world out there than the ones they were initially expecting, and it's a lot to face. And
from when you're making changes like this, you have the here and now brain and emotion that's like, yes, this is what's going on, and then you've got the 5-year-old, the 12-year-old that heard something, that was taught something, that tends to come up and be like, this is wrong, and we start to get those feelings that start to happen as we're making these changes. You're wrong. You're going to hell.
Sure.
You know this is bad, or this is against what everything's supposed to be, and you're like, no, this is me, and you've got this internal battle that tends to take place in order to, or as you're trying to get through these, whether you're transitioning from a faith that you grew up with, or like you're saying, coming out, or experiencing different. Exploring different relationships, things along those lines.
So, and this is a dramatic example, but it's a true one from my own story. And this is a sex therapy podcast,
yes.
So I'll be slightly more detailed. And I tell this story in my book. But I grew up trying to reaffirm to myself constantly that I was straight. And I grew up in a culture that associated sex and masturbation and even thoughts about sex as sin, as wrong. You're making Jesus bleed on the cross when you have these thoughts. So for me, it's you're straight, you're straight, you're straight. And every time a good-looking guy would walk by and I would notice, I would mentally flog myself for even having had an attraction. At 15, this is a story I tell in my book. I hung a giant picture of Jesus over my bed, and I would play Mormon Tabernacle choir music to go to sleep so I could keep my thoughts pure. And if the temptations ever got too strong and I had to masturbate, I would get up and take the picture of Jesus down and turn off the music and then masturbate. And upon completion, I would get nauseous. I would sometimes have to rush to the bathroom to vomit because I was so indoctrinated. And eventually that nausea started happening whenever I saw an attractive guy, even without any sort of physical act. Just noticing someone attractive led me to have ulcer-like symptoms.
Wow.
Stomach aches and headaches. And it was an extreme violation of myself and my spirit that went on for well over 15 years. So then getting married and having sex with a woman, which was not something I'm programmed to do, I would have those same type of nausea and body reactions. Then coming out of the closet, I had to figure out how to navigate that because there was all of those years of previous programming that literally had emotional, spiritual, and physical manifestations in the way that I would approach life. So I know that's a dramatic example, but I see clients in my office who have gone through spiritual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and they have all of these internalized worlds of pain and fear and hurt and trauma based on, so if your partner is attracted to someone else, what does that mean to me as a person?
Yeah.
Or if I'm attracted to someone else, what does that mean? There's all of these years of programming often associated with their own parents. Mom went through this, dad went through this. Perhaps they've recovered from sexual abuse or assault in the past. There's a myriad of issues that go into all of this, and it's extremely individualistic and extremely complex.
Yeah. So because of the complexity, I mean, the example you just gave of your own story, I mean, that it becomes so complex that it makes me wonder, when you're wanting to change a relationship, or when you're wanting to, coming back to what you're saying, where you're taking care of yourself prior to changing a relationship or getting into a relationship, would you say that's a recommendation that you have in getting into a monogamous relationship, any relationship, whether it's monogamous or polyamorous, like working on yourself, working on your baggage first?
If you've ever seen RuPaul's Drag Race,
I have. Oh wait,
it's
yes,
great.
I have.
RuPaul closes every show with the quote: "If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else?" It is just it's a great and comical way of putting that you're not capable of being happy with another person or having them take your pain away if you can't do that yourself. Using a physical example, if I've put on 5 pounds, it's relatively easy to use nutrition and exercise to amend that 5-pound problem. If I've put on 150 and I've carried it around, the later in life that I wait to get in shape, the longer it's going to take for that to happen. And it doesn't happen overnight. I can't put on 150 pounds and go to the gym twice and have that problem amended, right? So there are people who are navigating polyamory, depression, etc., who have been facing this for months and or years and or decades.
Wow.
And if you're doing it with divorce or with mental illness or with physical illness or with children, things become so much more complex. And if I was to take a snapshot of everyone who's ever come in my office, nobody looks the same.
No.
And no relationship or no polyamorous relationship looks like any other.
Definitely. And man, I'm just sitting here thinking of all the different, like you said, the snapshot of all the people that have been sitting here in your office. Thinking of kids, thinking of whatever baggage each person has been bringing in. When someone is deciding to, is there any recommendations that you have when someone decides that they want to start, or they're thinking of getting into a polyamorous relationship, whether that's an emotional relationship with someone else, they would like to start this contract, or this new relationship and choosing to be together with their partner and opening it up to other individuals? what recommendations do you have? What advice would you give to help start that process on the right foot?
Well, if we're assuming it's a couple coming in, whether or not they have children, and they're asking, they're looking for advice on how to become polyamorous, I'm going to give the same types of advice here. I'm going to look at motivations. Why should this happen? Why are you wanting this? Are both people consenting? What are they hoping to get out of it? Are they healthy? Are they stable? Are they in a good place to proceed from there? I also have to give them the advice not to be in a big hurry. It's got to take slow, consistent change at a time. Using the physical example again, it's better to lose 1 pound a week for 40 weeks than it is to lose 40 pounds in 1 week. There has to be slow, consistent, steady change over time. Now, the reality of the situations out there are it's relatively, and it's always dangerous for a guy to say this, just based on the misogynistic culture, but it's relatively easy for a woman to find an interested man. It's much more difficult for a man to find an interested woman. Not always, and not as a tried true rule.
Yeah, it's not the rule.
But you see, when I see couples entering these situations, whether it's online or in person, it's much easier, quote unquote, easier for the woman to find support or interest in other women or other men than it is for the man to find other interest from women. So it's a saturated pool. And if you've ever joined like a dating site as a straight man, you'll see that as true. Women will join a site and get 60 messages. The guy sends out 60 messages and gets 1 response.
Yes.
So there's a lot of complicating factors. And what does that mean for pride and shame and all of these other things? A lot of straight men tend to be very possessive of their spouses as well. So when there's other people showing interest in their partner, there's a lot of rage and jealousy and, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I can divert onto 100 different paths, but as a standard, helping people understand the realities of what they're facing, knowing why, knowing what to expect and what they want to get out of it, and then being prepared to face those realities. Those are huge.
So when someone is wanting to, like you say, they come in with the what? They're saying, this is what we'd like to do. We're feeling very healthy together. And we'd like to be able to have other people that meet the needs that I can't 100% give to my partner, that they can't give to me, and we're open to this, and we'd like to, and we're not going to be in a hurry. And we feel like our relationship's stable, so we're kind of meeting some of these lines. Do we start to? Is this a great time to be able to say, so what kind of trauma history do I have? Have I looked at my trauma history? Is that an important part of like, okay, we've kind of nailed some of these things. Where do we start looking in the corners for where some of the baggage might be?
Sometimes that comes up in the first 5 minutes. Sometimes that's not until the 6th or 8th therapy session that there's stuff behind the scenes. It depends on the person and how they're presenting with that. Yeah. And again, what they're looking for and what their motivations are. And I also have to give a shout out to region as well. Being polyamorous in Salt Lake City, again, you're going to have a huge pool of people who are polyamorous, but they're mostly going to be ex-Mormon. If you're in a place like Idaho Falls, Idaho, or Billings, Montana, or worse, little small towns, the dating pool is non-existent. There's handfuls of people as opposed to hundreds. And again, everybody has their own baggage, their own story. But trauma can play into it very frequently. As you get into the kink community and people who enjoy being tied up or knife play or rape role play or domination or I identify myself as a slave and I wear a collar and my husband is my master and they call each other slave and master. Trauma may or may not work into any of those situations. Yeah. And it becomes very complex. Very much and triggering for certain people who aren't prepared for those areas. That doesn't mean if you like to be tied up and have a knife pulled, that doesn't mean that you have trauma history that you're trying to play out. I'm not saying that 100%, but there are clients where that is the case. And so it becomes very complex because there can be people reenacting trauma. So there's, again, a lot of shades of complexity with that. Completely.
And like you're saying, it doesn't mean that that it's a causation thing. I've had trauma, so therefore I want to go to the BDSM or kink community. You can completely choose into that in a very healthy manner, and it is okay to play. It's okay to be all of what you would like to be, but it does make it complex.
Sure.
When as we're talking, when you say Do you know of any websites or any blogs or anything like that where if someone's interested in hearing other people's stories or interested in the poly community or the kink community, is there a place they can go to even continue exploring the different experiences other people have had or the rules? Because I don't have one off the top of my head.
So in book version, you can go to the bookstore or Amazon and purchase. There's a book called The Ethical Slut. Mm-hmm. There's another book called More Than Two. And both of those books aren't perfect, but they give pretty healthy snapshots of what the poly community is like. If you just do a Google search for poly, you can find many, many websites and articles and books and resources. If you're looking for like standard community, most big cities, Portland, Seattle, Salt Lake City, etc., have a polyamory organization. Not everybody who's polyamorous is part of that organization, but for example, for Salt Lake City, there's a very vibrant and active Facebook group called the Utah Polyamory Society, mm-hmm. and you can join those groups and have conversations with people. I had someone join recently who was kind of expecting to log on and see discussions about here's what I like when I have sex, and I'm looking for dates, and instead she saw a lot of posts that were like, I'm very jealous of my husband. It's his third date with this woman and I'm left alone and feeling insecure. How do I navigate that? Mm-hmm. Or I've come to many parties and nobody's talking to me and I think no one in the world likes me. What should I do? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of human need in these types of posts, but it's wonderful to be able to connect with people.
Wow.
So I say that because oftentimes the community that you expect you're getting into is a very different community than what mm-hmm. it is.
Yeah, still very human, not a complete sexcapade the entire time, right?
No, and even swinging events or track parties aren't like that. Yeah. Everybody has a day job the next day. The sun always comes up. Uh-huh. So those issues become human issues always.
Very much so. And I think it's easy for people to forget that we've got this conception of what being a swinger is, what being polyamorous, or what it'd be like to open up a relationship. And all the sex that could be had, and it just almost kind of becomes a pornography, like a scenario that your car breaks down on the side of the road, and all of a sudden you're having sex, and just how kind of the porn model, I guess I call it, because everything leads to sex versus we're all human, sex is involved, but you need to recognize that you've got emotion, you've got mental thoughts, you've got physical abilities and disabilities, and you're trying to deal with spirituality, and it's all together in this big part.
I explore that in my book also, not in the polyamory community, but in the gay community, mm-hmm. How in my early 30s I finally come out, and there's gonna be this vibrant, wonderful, accepting community of handsome men who are all interested in me, and life's gonna finally be easy. Mm-hmm. What it turned into is a series of years worth of bad dates and heartbreaks and learning how to be lonely and how to be mad and how to be sad and how to take care of myself and how to raise my children and be clear with communication and integrity. Mm-hmm. And that's much more what being gay is for me, is being an authentic whole person, not having this escapism of Saturday night parties with the dance floor and alcohol. That's not what the world is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can have that if I want that, or I can figure out me and be true to me.
Yeah.
And so I think anytime we're leaving behind one world and entering another, we have to have those parts of us that become vibrant.
Yeah.
For people who are authentic and who love themselves and who love the people they're with, the monogamous or the polyamorous community work because they know how to grow and adapt within those systems.
Yeah.
But we dwell in a world of people who say things like, I will be happy when I have kids, when I fall in love, when I get the perfect job, when I'm done with school, when I lose my weight, or whatever it is. And they achieve those goals and then they're still not happy.
The grass is greener, right? Type of thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so the polyamory community is full of that also.
Oh, and so the polyamory community is full of that as well.
Just like the human, any human community is going to be that way. There's hierarchies and politics and culture and complications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to keep all that in mind, that you're working with humans, and humans have all of these needs, and no matter where you're going, this is going to be a part of that.
Right.
It'd be the same as trying to quit a job, like you're saying, and being like, I'm going to get to this new job, and there's not going to be any drama. And I'm going to like everyone that's working with me, and we're not going to have any problems. I'm going to do everything just the way that I want to do it. And when you get into it, it's the same way. Like, you're going to run into issues, you're going to run into shortcomings and success and all sorts of different things.
I had one client compare it to like moving to Hawaii.
Ooh.
And the first 6 weeks is magical. It's beaches and sunsets and pineapple. But after a while, you're just going home and watching Netflix and not looking out your window anymore. And you don't like pineapple that much. You know, it's I think anything, even our versions of paradise become standard and normal. And then what?
Yeah.
We're always left in our own skin after a period of time. So again, that ability to grow and adapt. But I do want to say very loudly that I know many, many, many gay and straight couples who are polyamorous who are very happy.
Yeah.
With children. Let me say that again. Polyamorous couples who have children, not children who are polyamorous or people who are polyamorous with children. That is not what I meant. So parents who are poly, older couples, gay couples, couples who are 30 years apart in age. There's every shade of this, and they're all very happy and vibrant.
Yeah.
And I know many others who really struggle.
Yeah, just almost like, just like any other relationship, whether monogamous, whether not. You can have difference in ages. You can have difference in children. You can be very happy and excited, and you can also be very unhappy and just going through the motions.
One really fascinating part of polyamory, there's an acronym called NRE, which stands for New Relationship Energy. So you have these couples, they may have been together for a really long time. Well, I'll use Jack and Jill here again, just the names, not the same people.
Yeah.
But Jack suddenly, he's very okay with Jill dating some guy named Mark. And after a few weeks, he realizes that Jill's really excited to see Mark pretty regularly. The sex is great. She wants to spend all of her time with him, and she's not so happy to come home to Jack anymore. And so there's this new relationship energy. She has somebody new in her life, and it's super exciting.
Yeah.
And that tends to wear off over a period of time. And then they're kind of left restoring what there was. And then a few months later, Jack meets Jane, and suddenly Jill is very jealous because Jack is super excited about Jane. So this is something I see come up in most polyamorous relationships at some point.
Yeah.
Sometimes multiple times. Is this NRE that this new person, it's that honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this new person, and then it wears off.
Can you speak to being able to deal with, or some methods that we can use to deal with that jealousy with an NRE, or the jealousy, or the, as you were explaining, a person sitting at home thinking, man, I'm feeling neglected. I'm not 100% sure. How do I navigate this? Are there any, how can someone start to work through that in these relationships?
We have to learn how to confront our own demons, and that's not easy to do. I'll use, again, a personal example. I remember after having been out of the closet for about a year, and I love my children more than anything, and there was a particular night I spent the whole evening playing with my kids, and I put them to bed, and I was so happy. And then I sat on the couch and cried my eyes out because all of my friends were out having fun at parties, and I wasn't able to go because I had to sit home and be with my kids. It was a very 14-year-old boy way of looking at the world. Like, this isn't fair. I'm stuck here. And then I realized, I'm a grown man with children, and I'm feeling all of this resentment and pain and regret and hurt and shame. Then I shame myself for having those feelings in the first place.
Oh, man.
My kids should be enough to make me happy. Why am I broken like this? The shame shows up on every level. Again, what I said, I had to learn how to be lonely. I had to learn how to feel sad and scared. I had to learn to embrace and accept those emotions and not just expect to be happy and satisfied all the time. So in large part, that's what people in polyamorous or monogamous relationships have to learn how to do. They have to create safety for their jealousy, their pain, their anger, their rage, and they have to learn what to do with that, how to process it and what to do with it.
Is that involved, just like you were doing, someone sitting on the couch and saying, well, I'm really feeling a lot of judgment that I'm feeling this way. I'm also feeling like I'm missing out. I wonder what part this is that's speaking to me. What am I missing? And how do I sit with this and say, okay, I am an adult. I am trying to do this, and I did choose into this, and now I want something else.
Assuming that I'm a responsible, balanced person in a relationship with a responsible, balanced person. Assuming that we're both ground zero, happy, healthy people.
Yeah.
It's Saturday night, and my spouse is out with someone else and I'm feeling really jealous and lonely. And I realize I'm feeling jealous and lonely. So I journal about it, or I call a friend, or I talk it through, or I go to the gym, like I work it out. Then I decide what to do with it once I'm calm. Do I want to talk to my spouse about it? Do I want to keep it to myself? I'm making a responsible decision. When I do talk to my spouse about it, when it is time for that, we're going to assume that they are receptive and willing to listen and be happy, and that they're willing to say, wow, okay, I can see where you're hurting. How can I help? Where can I meet you in the middle? Right? Like we're going to assume that these are healthy, balanced. Most often that's not what happens. No. People get passive aggressive. They play games. Well, I'm just going to sleep in the guest room and see if he even notices. And I'm not going to text him next time. Or they sit up and wait all night just fuming and furious. And then I'm going to go get drunk with my friends. Well, he was with her. I'm going to go cheat now. Whatever it is. People most frequently leap toward unhealthy life decisions. But even the healthy ones are hard. Yeah. And that's poly. That's what poly is. That's what being happy is. It's learning how to adapt to difficult emotion, create safety for it, and to move through it.
Yeah. And like you're saying, the partner is then there listening and saying, wow, that was really tough for you. I appreciate you letting me go out and that we're a part of this, but also how can I be there to support you?
Right.
And that's hearing hard things.
That's what healthy poly looks like.
Yeah.
Well, and then the partner may need to come back. Hey, I was supportive when you went out with Charlie a few days ago. Why are you acting like this now that I'm going out with Jane? I mean, I understand, I empathize, but it doesn't seem fair. Yeah. And they have to find a way to bring that up and make it safe. So again, it's very complex. And it might be fine one night and totally not fine the next.
Yeah. And if you find yourself in this not healthy poly or not healthy monogamy, and you're or a relationship, this is a great time to go find counseling, to go talk to Chad or me or someone that's poly accepting, and that you can be able to explore all these different emotions that do come up when your partner is out with someone else, or when you are feeling lonely, or when you are feeling jealous or the pain and you're not quite sure how to work through it. It's a great time to be able to seek for professional help to be able to work through these experiences.
I can much more quickly as a therapist help the clients with the 5-pound problems than I can those with the 150-pound problems.
Very much so.
Again, all of them are doable, but the longer you wait or the more serious the problems become, the more weight that is on them, the more long-term they take to address, the more effort there has to be in the beginning. Change is jarring. It's just like, again, with a personal trainer. Hey, I have this very small goal to meet. Let's work together and do it. Yeah. But if I need to change my whole life over the next 3 years, that's a different type of thing. But any type of work takes consistency and change and concerted effort over time. And that's not easy. People aren't accustomed to doing that on an emotional or spiritual level. No. We're accustomed to numbing ourselves and to adopting unhealthy coping mechanisms. We don't want to face the shadowy parts of ourselves. Yeah. We want to blame others. We want to hide. And that doesn't work. So it's tricky.
And what I've also found is we don't want to put a ton of work into getting to the fun part either. And so being able to be in a place where if you're wanting to open the relationship, if you're wanting to be to explore some new part of a relationship, it is important for you to sit down and set up the why, the goals, the how you're going to plan on carrying yourself. I think one couple I was working with, they said that they set up their whitelist. They go whitelist and blacklist. Blacklist meaning like these are definitely off the table, but everything else is on the table. And I encourage couples to do whitelist setting, where it's like these are the things that are on the table and the only things that are going to be acceptable. And for this couple, they were saying, we want to have relationships. I don't want you to have sex with the other person. I don't want you to have sex with the other person. We're both on that. Kissing's on the table. You love to run. I hate running. You can go run with Jane over here. And if you fall in love with her and things like that, that's totally okay. You can have your needs met that way, kiss, but we don't want penetration. We don't want any of that. That is off the table. And so they're able to really set up their rules and their guidelines so that when that jealousy comes up, they're not jealous about a line that's been crossed.
Right. Consent, not cheating.
Exactly.
So Jill tells Jack, it's okay for you to have sex with Molly and with Amanda, but no one else. And with Molly and Amanda, you have to, I want to know first, and you have to use a condom. Or for Jack and Bob, a gay couple, Jack tells Bob, I'm happy being monogamous with you. Once a month when you're traveling for work, if you want to find a partner, I don't want to know about it, but that's cool with me. Just make sure you use protection.
Yeah.
As long as they're following the rules and keeping within their consensual boundaries, that's okay.
Completely.
Let me tell a story really quickly.
Yeah,
and I know we have
please
to
do.
wrap up
Yeah.
here quick. When I first moved to Utah, this is a real story. Again, I tell this in my book. I was approached by a very good-looking guy online through a dating app who invited me out for coffee. And we met and had great chemistry personality-wise. But after a few minutes, he said, hey, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend. He had not mentioned having had a boyfriend previously. It wasn't part of his profile. So suddenly there's this man at another table that gets invited over to our table. And they explained to me that they are gay. This is before gay marriage was allowed. They are gay. They go to church every week where they pretend to be roommates. They're actively Mormon. And they're looking for a third, quote unquote, husband to be part of their relationship. And they targeted me specifically because I have kids and they think it would be great to have kids around. So then I'm like, wait, you're Mormon, but you're having sex with other guys. And they're like, well, yeah, the law of chastity doesn't really apply to us. So are you interested? I'm like, well, I'm certainly willing to get to know you guys. Let me order a cup of coffee. To which they responded, ooh, coffee's against our standards. Could you not drink that in front of us?
Oh, wow.
So there's this bizarre shaping of we are lying about who we are at church. The law of chastity doesn't apply to us, but we follow all Mormon standards. Could you please conform to ours? By the way, can we meet your kids?
Yeah.
That's polyamory.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very weird, twisted version of polyamory, but that was one of my first exposures to it in Utah. And a lot of the people that I see have these weird, justifiable ways of thinking about things.
Definitely.
So it becomes very complex.
Very
Again, I'm using that word
complex.
a lot.
Yeah.
But it's different for every couple. That could be the couple that walks through your door as a professional saying, we need help navigating through this.
Yeah, very much so. Is there just in the last words? Is there any? Well, again, it's so complex. Maybe this I tend to ask questions about, like, if you were to give any not relationship advice, but some advice to a couple that is listening to this podcast, saying like, okay, I think that we're playing with the idea of this polyamory. Is there any recommendations or any advice that you give to them, or is it just kind of this complex?
Well, it's both. So read, research, talk about it, figure out what it is you're looking for. Make sure you're both balanced and healthy individually and together before you decide to open it up. Don't be in a rush, and realize that even if you're doing everything right, there's going to be a lot of pain and growth patterns along the way. That's going to be part of it. It's never just free and easy. It's not about just easy, regular sex. That's kind of what people think, but it's much more complex. Humans are complex. Also recognize that you're going to change and grow and adapt over time.
Yeah.
So those are the most tried and true kind of pieces of advice I can give, but they're pretty complex as you apply them to each individual and what they're looking for.
Very much so. Well, Chad, is there any way, if someone is listening and wants to get in touch with you, is there a way for them to contact you if they want to come in and see you, or if they've got questions or want to know about your book or documentary?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm online. So Chad Anderson, LCSW in Utah. My phone number and email are pretty out there. My book's called Gay Mormon Dad. It's on Amazon. The documentary is not up yet. It'll probably be several months before we're completed and ready to view for the public, but you can watch out for Dog Valley when it's ready.
Hopefully in 2018 then.
Yeah. We're hoping for a Sundance premiere, but who knows?
Oh, way cool.
Who knows? So
Yeah.
we have to finish it first.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you. But the others, as far as scheduling an appointment or finding the book, those are both pretty easy online.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chad. I'm going to have you back on for sure.
Thank you, and thanks for what you're doing. This was great.
We'll see you later. This has been another episode of the Birds and Bees podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions about the show, comments, or questions you would like addressed in another episode, please give us a call at 385-449-1818. Leave your voicemail and your question, or you can also email us at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com, or visit us online at birdsandbeespodcast.com.